Welcome back again, guys. I am a part of a Discord server called Pokemon 1999. If you follow along with all the videos on the channel, I had a video I posted previously where I got to commentate over the finals of a match that was played on that server. But if you're new and haven't seen that video, that's perfectly fine. Pokemon 1999 is a group, it's a Discord server where they play various retro Pokemon formats. Basically any of the kind of WotC era stuff, base Neo, base Fossil, base Rocket, base Gym, Prop 15. They have a point buy system where some of the more egregious cards are assigned a point value and you only have so many points to build a deck. They have a 50 HP max format that they play. Just all kinds of ways to enjoy your retro Pokemon cards. Typically though, they are confined to English releases. For obvious reasons, it's kind of an English server, so that makes sense. There's a set that was released exclusively in Japan called the Pokemon Versus series. Many of you, even if you know retro Pokemon, might not even know about this set because it is exclusively in Japanese. But the idea was that it was sold in 30 card packs that were ready to play as a deck. They came as two colors. There were 3 different packs sold as 2 colors at a time, and that was the deck you got. It was supposed to be kind of introductory and really accessible. The Pokemon are all basic, but they're all evolved, and they are all trainers Pokemon. So it's kind of like the Gym Heroes and Gym Challenge set, but for Gen 2 essentially. The set came out in 2001. There was one set and a set of movie promos that went along with it, but it's a combined card pool of 160 or so cards. We didn't use the promos this first time, so it was 140 card pool. But just recently, someone in the Discord server has fully translated the cards into English. We've had English translations for a long time, but not on the cards. But just recently, someone finished fully updating the text on those cards, and it's awesome. I went ahead and I built a draft cube for the Versus format, and I thought that would be really fun. It's a set no one's ever gotten to play. Everything's a basic, so it works really well as a cube. It's just an interesting drafting experience. So I got to experience that format, I guess, if you will, as sort of side event stuff at the most recent Brew City Showdown hosted by the Mana Vault in Milwaukee, and it was super successful. We got to draft 3 different times with 6-player pods each time. It was awesome. And so I posted a bunch of pictures and hyped it up and everything, and it kind of caught on that this was pretty cool. So for June this year, they decided in the Pokemon 99 League that we could try a Versus tournament. Now, like I said, the packs were originally sold as fixed, not fixed, they were randomized, but you knew what kind of color you were getting. But it was a little bit like Magic's Jumpstart, where you bought a pack and it was kind of ready to go. But in Japan, they also have the Versus half deck format, where you just play with a 30 card deck using the set, but you construct your deck. So that's what we decided to do here. And we just finished the event. I thought I would go over just the decks that were played in the event. Just kind of a little bit of what they're about, what the format kind of looks like. There is nothing online for content about Versus series other than people kind of showing off the set is cool. The Versus series is really obscure and really expensive. So there are some collector videos of look how cool this rare set of Pokemon cards is, but there's nothing as far as competitive content. So I thought it'd be really fun to kind of dig into that a little bit, that angle of things a little bit more. So to get started, there were 6 decks. There were 6 players in this tournament. It was just a small, one, and just people kind of trying out a new little format. So it'll be pretty quick, I think, to talk about the 6 decks, especially because they're half decks. I don't think it'll take super long, but this is already a 4-minute intro, so let's get right into it. The deck that got 6th place we're going to start with here. This deck I think actually is cooler than its 6th place finish. There was a no play match that resulted in a point difference here or there or whatever. But I think this deck is actually really cool. So the core of the deck is the Morty's Gengar, the second card posted there. Its first power is Hypnosis for colorless, which just auto-sleeps the defending Pokemon, which is cool. You don't need a coin flip. There are a lot of coin flips in this format too. Welcome to Pokemon cards. But its big attack, for 1 Psychic, it has Transfer Pain. You move 1 damage counter from one of your Pokemon, not just your active, to one of your opponent's Pokemon. It doesn't have to be their active. Even if it would knock out the other Pokemon. Cool. So you can damage the Pokemon and knock it out. So Morty's Gengar gets to transfer the pain around the table. Awesome. And one of the interesting things about the versus format is that as I said, the Pokemon are all like trainer named, and because of it, they get these technical machines, and they attach to a Pokemon with that trainer's name, and then they give them like a move they can use one time, and then the TM disappears. If you've played any of the E-card series cards, there are a lot of these technical machine cards in that format just in general, but none of these specific trainer ones. But the Morty's technical machine is trans damage. For a Psychic and a colorless, it discards all energy cards attached to this Pokemon and then moves all damage counters from this Pokemon to the defending Pokemon. So you just completely wipe your character free, go from there. So the gimmick here is that you put the steel or the metal energy onto the Gengar so he takes less damage. And then slowly you just sort of like transfer one of your damage off to your opponent, and you kind of get to put it where it matters. And you can just sort of stick them up there. You can transfer some damage around. If you get hit with like a big attack, you can kind of, wait till you're at 40, 50 damage, use your trans damage, discard your 2 energy, and transfer all of that damage onto the Pokemon, which is typically enough to secure the KO, and then you're, back to full health. The sort of supporting end of this deck, Morty's Murkrow, it has Clutch, which for 2 colorless, the defending Pokemon can't retreat during your opponent's next turn, so unless they have like a switch or something like that, they are not getting to a different Pokemon there. And in this format, as you can already see from like the trainer line, the trainer pool in this format is like not deep, so you've got to get kind of creative with stuff. But there's not a lot of switching options. But it kind of locks them there. They can do the 20, and then if you can set up your own kind of switches into more of the transfer pain stuff. The entice effect on Murkrow, if you can put the dark energy or the rainbow on him, lets you pull up one of your opponent's bench Pokemon to the front. Also a decent way to kind of mix up their tabled strategy. And you can then set up the Gengar to start moving damage in interesting ways again. If they are in a setting where they're not going to get a lot of damage off on you anyway, the dark energy on Gengar gives you kind of the free 10 damage on him every turn anyway, so you kind of get a guaranteed damage to transfer. So that's a kind of interesting little mechanic as well. And then Will's Slowbro has a Body Slam for some decent damage, but his big thing is for a Psychic, he has Amnesia. You choose one of your opponent's defending Pokemon's attacks and they can't use it the next turn, which is great because, as you can see, most of these Pokemon have like something and then an attack that does damage. That's like pretty consistent for this format. So getting to just sort of like turn off their one impactful move is really, really big in this this type of setting. And then finally, the Will's Slowbro, this player does run the Will's Technical Machine as well, which has Energy Trick for 2 Psychic. It does 30 damage. And then if the defending Pokemon has any energy cards on them, you choose one and switch it to one of their other Pokemon, which is great because you can like pull off special energies, which, as you can see, there are not a lot of. And in 30 card, because you're playing with a half a deck, you have half-sized playsets, so a max of 2 copies of each card. So as this deck is running, there's 2 metals, 2 darks, 2 rainbows. That is like the maximum number of special energies you can have in a deck. And so if you can find a way to reposition the special energies, that can be really huge. Plus getting 30 damage out of it is just great too. Energy Charge makes obvious sense here because special energies are important, and this lets you shuffle non-basic energy cards back into your deck. Potion is just great in this format because you have this format is really like chess matchy in that a lot of it is just trying to find the exact like little sort of chip math to make the like 2-hit KO or 3-hit KO trades at the right pace to seal the KOs. You only have a 30 card deck, and so it's kind of easy to get stalled past winning. Like it's easy to stay alive long enough to just like deck your opponent out. So as part of that, you have to find safe ways and conscious ways to get the damage into the right places. And I think Morty's Gengar is a really interesting way to do that. But because of that, Potion is a pretty good card here because it kind of like saves you a turn. Where in other formats you would not waste the slot on Potion because you'd need Oaks and computer searches and whatever. But here, keeping that one Pokemon alive is like super important, especially because you only have 3 prizes. You can't really afford to give up a prize as much. Speaking of things that are not good most places, Full Heal is huge here. Nothing in this entire format has free retreat. So you can't just like switch into a guy with free retreat and then have a guy you're building up and then easily get him in. You have to pay the energy to set the retreat. So when you get status conditioned, it's not easy to switch into a different like free retreat guy and then free retreat him out back into the guy you wanted. That's going to cost you like at least a trainer and an energy or 2 energy to be able to pull off. So having Full Heal to just turn your Pokemon back on is actually really strong, and it's kind of interesting to just see Full Heal be represented in a way that's like actually powerful. And in this format where you kind of stick your main attacker and then try to keep them in play as long as you can, Full Heal is huge. Overall, I think this deck is really interesting, and I think the Gengar sort of damage swap system is really cool, and I think that there's a lot of grounds where that's going to be like one of the better kind of archetypal things. I just didn't quite pan out in this first event, but I think that the core of this list is awesome. Up next, we had another Psychic deck. This player had like a similar thought with the energy trick concept. 30 damage and movement power or important energies around is big. But he went with one of the Slowbro and then went with Slowking. Slowking has an effect for 3 Psychics where you choose one of your opponent's Pokemon and do 30 damage to it, ignoring weakness and resistance. So you can like ping a benched guy for a big chunk of damage. You can take out a active, however you need to do it. So Will Slowking works really well as like your sort of benched finisher that you're setting up as the game plays. You're sort of getting him to his 3 energy and ready to just start sniping KOs when the time comes. Will's Jinx has a similar concept to that. Also Hypnosis, Auto Sleep, cool. But Meditate for a Psychic and a Colorless does 10 damage plus 10 more for each each damage counter on the defending Pokemon. So as the turns go on, you can really get to where this is just like a big bomb. You can hit for 60, 70 damage sometimes. If they're like almost dead, it's just a surefire KO. It's an easy way. You throw the Will's Technical Machine. So one of the things that's interesting about the Technical Machines is you really have to work out the sort of like pace at which your turns like happen. So like one thing you could do with Jinx, right? So like turn 1, you Hypnosis, put him to sleep. And then turn 2, you hit him with the Technical Machine for 30. And then turn 3, you do Meditate, and that hits him for 40, and that's 70 damage, and that takes out like almost every Pokemon in the format. And so like unless they get a potion in there or something, which as you can see here from this deck too, most decks will run potions and Moo Moo Milks. So healing is pretty common, but if they don't, that's like a pretty locked in 3-hit KO. And so it's just like you have to find the sort of sequence chain to make these KOs line up. The Will's Draft Rig is also just like a simple basic attacker. You do get something that's important is you get a single energy attack that does damage. There aren't a lot of those, so that is very handy. And then Psi Shock for 20 damage gives you a paralyze on a coin's flip. Paralyze is a strong condition, just buys you a turn basically, especially with as rare as like actual switch mechanics are in this format. So not a bad attacker either. All 4, or I guess that's 6 total Will's Pokemon, so they can all use the Will's Technical Machines. You'll see here that this one has Will's Technical Machine 2, which the last deck did not have, but this one is Psychic, which does, for 2 Psychic also, does 20 damage plus 10 more for each energy attached to the defending Pokemon. So you can set that up also in the same way that you can with the Will's Slowking, to sort of clutching that for when it's time to knock out their like big attacker who's built up the 2 or 3 energy, and then this is a 50 damage attack. It's pretty easy to save that for that, and it's a really good like sort of surprise bomb. Chuck's Donphan is here to kind of cover the weakness. The dark type Pokemon in this format are all psychic resistant, and they are all, most of them are fighting weak. So having the fighting weakness to, or the fighting to shore up the weakness to your the half of your deck that's resisted is good. He's got a Fury attack. You flip 2 coins, does 10 damage times the number of heads. Just could be 20, could also be 40 against weakness. And then Overrun. For fighting in a colorless, it does 10 damage to your opponent's active Pokemon, but then also does 20 damage to something on their bench. So you still get a total of 30 damage for 2 energy, which is a pretty good conversion. But you also get to start pinging damage into other pockets that makes it easier to set up things with like Will's Slowking, where you've done 20 with the Overrun and then Will's Slowking for 30 more for a KO. And still just ignoring their active Pokemon. You can energy trick off the active Pokemon's like important energy and then just start working on like benched guys. So there's really interesting stuff you can do there. An energy restore, giving you 3 coins worth of energy back to your hand. Also cool. The energy trick does mean that you have to I guess that one doesn't, but I guess you do have, if your Slowking goes down, that's a 3 energy attack. You've probably built up. The Body Slam takes 3 energy. So by being able to buy back a couple of those if you need them is nice. And then the Master Ball, just searching for a Pokemon for a little bit of deck thin, makes sense too. I think this deck is cool, and I think that the like Will's package is pretty strong. It makes a lot of sense that 2 different people just like found it and were like, yeah, that looks good. Moving on to the third deck, we've got a deck built around the kind of Karen's Pokemon. This player is really interested in Umbreon. The Karen's Umbreon is, if you know anything about the Versus series, it might be the card you know. It's like the vintage style Umbreon. I think the card's like $2,000 or something insane. But you get both Umbreon and Tyranitar in this deck. This list, as opposed to some of the other ones that were, I think, sort of schemed up by the players in this event, this one I know for sure, like card for card, I've seen played in Japanese events as well. So the roots of this, I think, are pretty popular. But with the Karen's Umbreon, you get a 60 HP attacker. It gets coin flip paralyzed for colorless, sure. For dark and a colorless, you get Gouge. Can do 20 plus 10, which with the dark energy could be 40. 40 for 2 energy is like a pretty good attacker. Even 30 for 2 energy is pretty good. That's in this format for sure. The sort of conversion rate is 110, 220, 330, etc. If you can kind of hit that, you're doing okay. So that swings really above its weight class pretty well. The Tyranitar has a Stomp for 2 energy that lets you just do 10 damage plus 10 more. That attack I think is actually really undervalued. Unless you have the dark energies on him, then you're getting an extra 10 or 20 or whatever damage on it. Then maybe it's worth it, but that one is But Pitch is a pretty cool effect. For a dark and 2 colorless, so at least you're getting 40 damage minimum out of this. If your opponent has any bench Pokemon, they choose one and switch it. You do the damage before attacking. So So you just get a switch effect after dropping a 40 damage bomb on their active. Not something, I guess not a switch effect, a gust effect after damaging their Pokemon pretty well. Not a bad finishing attack. Overall, I have actually not found myself that interested in this particular Tyranitar. Even in draft, I tried drafting it a couple times, and I was just like not loving it. But the pitch effect is pretty cool. It's a decent attack. Morty's Ninetales is, I think, in my like probably top 5 favorite cards in this like series. So for 1 fire, you get Call Will-O-Wisp. For 3 coins, you get energy equal to the number of heads you flip back to your hand. Great. The fire Pokemon require you to discard fire energy to do their moves most of the time. So having access to that attack for 1 is great. And then for 2, you get a 20 damage auto sleep, which, you know, as you know, there's a 50% chance they just get to do nothing with their turn, and you get to just like keep chaining it in. I love this card. I think I am a big fan of that one. The Sabrina's Espeon is kind of an interesting finisher tech also. So you get Sunflash, which just prevents, like, when your opponent attacks next turn, if they have to flip a coin, if tails, nothing happens. It's kind of like the baby rule, but like as an attack. And then Psywave, though, is a single psychic energy, which you can get with the Rainbow Energy here. It does 10 damage times the number of energy cards on the defending Pokemon. So we talked about that before with the Psychic TM, but this one for just 1 energy, you can just sort of have this in the back waiting its turn, and when it's finally time, you're like, all right, go ahead and take 40 or whatever they need to do. So this is a really nice little tech slot. I like this Espeon a lot. Interesting, the like shiny colors of it is fun too, but I think that's a nice little addition to the deck. Karen's Technical Machine 1 and 2 are both featured in this deck at 1 copy each. Karen's Machine 1 is Feint Attack. It does 20 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon, ignoring resistance, weakness, whatever, that's fine. 2 energy, 20 damage to a Pokemon. I don't think this card is that impressive, but having the ability to snipe is always, you know, welcome. But the Karen's Technical Machine 2, I think, is neat. It does 20 damage plus 20 more if they're already damaged. Which is reasonably easy to do, and a 2 energy 40 damage attack is a big way to seal the deal in this format for sure. 2 potions, 2 Moo Milks makes a lot of sense in a format where you're playing, or in a deck where you're playing special energies. Keeping those Pokemon alive is obviously huge. Super Scoop Up makes a ton of sense then too. If one of your dark Pokemon is about to be KO'd, you can put it back in your hand on a coin flip, of course, but saving those darkness energies to be able to be used again later. And then again, Master Ball is present here because of course it is. Moving on to, this is the 4th deck, I guess that'd just be 3rd place. This one, as you can see, is very colorless focused, but it's kind of built around this Jasmine Steelix. It's got 80 HP, which is the highest HP in the format. There are a couple of 80 HP Pokemon, but there's no one with more than that. But for 2 colorless, it does 10 damage on a coin flip, paralyzed. Not a great first attack. But Iron Tail, flip a coin until you get tails. It does 20 damage times the number of heads for a metal energy and a colorless. Obviously, coin flips is like not great, but I mean, there's no cap to how much damage that can do, so it's a pretty decent gamble. But because you're such a big, beefy Pokemon at 80 HP, and you're putting metal energies on him, because that's of course what you're doing, you can really kind of tank behind him, and that makes for a really long, drawn-out game, and that's sort of the win con this deck was going for. You've got Whitney's Lickitung, which is sort of like the infamous base fossil style Lickitung with Lick, flip a coin of heads, the defending Pokemon's not paralyzed. This one doesn't do any damage, and notably isn't 90 HP, but still the same concept of you get this guy out there and then you just sort of like prolong your opponent's existence for a little bit. Faulkner's Togetic has a healing a touch effect for 1 that you flip a coin, and then if heads, you choose one of your bench Pokemon, remove 3 damage counters from it, and then switch that Pokemon with Togetic. So you can have Steelix out there just tanking a ton of damage. You can then switch him into Togetic, use its attack, heal 3 damage off of the Steelix, and then free retreat into him to just put it back up there and start tanking the damage again. So this deck plays 2 switches and 2 warp points to facilitate that. You've also got the super scoop ups to, right as you're about to get KO'd, you can put them back in your hand and make them start all over again. Just huge. The Jasmine Steelix is your primary focus. That is what you want active in this deck. So the Jasmine's Technical Machine has Healing Flash. Steelix is the only Jasmine's Pokemon in the deck, but it's going to be your active for a long time, so it makes sense to have this machine. But with it, you get to flip a coin. If heads, you remove 3 damage counters from each of your Pokemon. If tails, you remove 1 damage from each of them. So you just get to heal regardless. But for heads, you get to heal a lot of spread damage. As I talked about with the previous decks, the kind of spread damage mechanic does tend to be pretty common in this format, and I think pretty good. And this card just giving you an out to that is pretty nice. And finally, I want to talk about Falconer's Delibird. This has package delivery for 2 colorless. You put it and all cards attached to it on top of your deck. Then you search your deck for a trainer card, show it to your opponent, and put it into your hand. Then you shuffle your deck. So as I talked about with this deck especially, and just kind of this format, the deck out win is a pretty achievable victory condition. So having a card that can put, even if you put Falconer and the 2 energy on him back in your deck, that's 3 cards back into your deck, and then you take out a trainer if there's any left. So you've essentially put 2 cards back into your deck, which means you've erased 2 of the turns that you've played, which puts you typically 2 cards above your opponent, or 1 card above your opponent if they went second. So it can change the order at which players would deck out and can save you from losing the game. So I think that's a nice, interesting tech, and I think that card is surprisingly almost a staple. The more that I play this format, the more I think that package delivery effect is really good. Into the second place deck, this was the deck that I played. It was built around the Blaine's Typhlosion as my primary attacker. Claw Sight for 10, whatever. But for 2 fire energies, it does 30. I do have to discard a fire energy attached to it, but I also get to switch their active Pokemon with one of the Pokemon on their bench. They get to decide, sure, but they still have to switch, which means they have to start planning out where their energy goes, because as long as he is active, I don't have to do a coin flip or anything. They're just getting gusted out every single turn. And so it makes it difficult for them to find where to put their energy in a meaningful manner. Plus, 30 damage for 2 energy is a beefy amount of damage in this format, so he hits like a truck and makes it difficult for your opponent to plan where to put their energy. We have the Morty's Ninetales here again. I gushed about it before, and I love it even more in this deck where it's dedicated. The Karen's Houndoom for a colorless has Roar, which lets me on a coin flip switch or gust out the active Pokemon. So I've got another little rotation gimmick there. But for Blazing Breath, it does 20 damage for 2. And then I flip a coin. If heads, I discard a fire and it does 40. So I don't have to discard the fire all the time. But if I don't hit the heads, it's 20 damage, don't discard a fire. 2 for 20, perfect. If I do, I discard a fire and I do 40. That's absurd damage. And makes for a great finisher. So I like to bench the Houndoom and then just start, have the 2 energy on him, and then just when I need him to come up, there's the 40. Or if I hit a weakness deck, I can hit for even 80, which is great. This card alone, on a good flip, can one-shot the Steelix if it hasn't been metal energied anyway. At 80 HP, if I go first, Houndoom, get it out there before they get a chance to get their 2 energy on there. Maybe they haven't done the metal first, whatever. I can 2-shot it, or 1-shot it even, sorry. So I thought it was a nice little inclusion in the deck, but Typhlosion is our primary move. Now, all of these guys are weak to water, so I did play the Lances Ampharos as my sort of coverage. It does have a 1 energy attack for 10, which would do 20 into weakness, and it's got 80 HP. In the future, I would probably cut 2 fire energy for 2 lightning, or maybe even 2 rainbow, and that way I could at least have the second attack online, but just the sort of pepper 20 damage to cover the weakness if it showed up is why I had him there. But removal beam for a lightning and 2 colorless, flip a coin if heads, discard an energy card attached to the defending Pokemon, pretty good. We've got Moo Milks, potions, makes a lot of sense, just keeping the Typhlosion alive. Energy restore, putting fire energies back in my hand because I lose them so easily. Master Ball and Switch, again, makes sense. I just ran the 1 copy of Switch. I sort of clutched that like gold, waiting for the turn where being paralyzed or something would be an actual problem, and I just swap it out that way. Typhlosion does have a 2 retreat cost, and Ampharos is a 3. So if either one of them is active and has to move for some reason, it's a costly experience to do so. So having a switch option is nice. And then finally, the last deck that we have is the water deck. I lost to this deck in the final round. As you can imagine, the water deck beat my fire deck. Crazy, who would have guessed? But I did manage to take a game in our best of 3, so I'll count that as a little bit of a win. But we've got Price's Articuno. I'll start with this one. For 3 waters, Icy Wind, Auto Sleep for 30, 3 energy, 30 damage, and you get a status condition. Cool, whatever. And then Price's Sneasel, Scratch for 10, and a dark Pokemon that doesn't require dark energy. Really nice. So for a water and a colorless, you get 20 damage and 10 more on a heads flip, and sleep if you get the heads. If you have the dark energy on there, it's 30. Awesome. And then Claire's Kingdra, 10 damage, single colorless. Good. I mentioned it before, but having a 1 energy attack that actually does damage is pretty good in this type of format. And then Torrent for 2 water and a colorless does 2 coins, 30 damage plus 10 for each more heads, so you can get 50 on a double heads flip. 50 for 3, pretty good. Minimum of 30 for 3 is like exactly on curve, so it's just free value on top of it. No complaints there. Claire's Technical Machine, we've got a copy of in this deck, which I think is one of the coolest technical machines that exists, and I think it's part of the reason that playing like Claire's Pokemon is worth it. You get Twister, flip 2 coins. If both are tails, this attack does nothing. That sucks. But for each heads, you get to discard an energy attached to the defending Pokemon, and it does 40 damage. So as long as you don't flip 2 heads, which can, 2 tails, that can happen. But if it doesn't, you get 40 guaranteed damage and 1 or 2 energy removals in a format where energy removal as a card doesn't exist. Pretty gross. Really, really effective TM. And this deck played Energy Arc, which lets you search your deck for basic energies to put into your hand. None of the other decks played Energy Arc, and I don't know where I'm at necessarily on the Energy Arc thing. I need to play more. Like, part of the issue is that I played Fire, and I played 16 Fire energies because I lose them all the time. So, like, I never had a single... Like, I couldn't stop drawing energies. So maybe if with a little bit more play with less energies, I would feel worse about it. But in the games that I played, I didn't see any of my opponents struggle to keep an energy, like, draw happening. So this one, I don't know. But, I mean, the deck got first. Like, you know, they got first place. So it you know, must have worked fine. But the potion, Moo Milk, Scoop Up, Full Heal here, all make, like, those, you're just going to play those in most things. That's the good trainer core in this one. I know that this deck here was played by Ogre, who has his own YouTube channel and is very active in the community, and he has said that, like, he's going to go to 2 full heals, which I also agree with. I think that having full heal is, like, almost mandatory in this format. There are a ton of Pokemon that do status conditions, and switching is really hard. So, yeah, I mean, that's it. That's the 6 decks. I think that it was just interesting to dig into, like, what the cards actually do and what they're used for, and the thought process that goes into decks in this format. With a really small card pool, I think it's still cool how many like archetypes do exist. You still get like the damage swap thing, you still get stall, you can still have kind of an aggro thing in the fire deck. The lightning deck, which isn't really represented in this event, but lightning can be pretty aggressive also, so you can have a bit of kind of the aggro coverage there too. So I thought that was cool. I think that my takeaways from this first event is that the sort of like stall win con is really, really effective, and I want to see, as we do, assuming, fingers crossed, that we get to do more of these versus tournaments, I'd like to see what decks we can come up with that overcome that stall strength. Curious to see where that goes. I know the plan with the next one is to add in the promo cards and stuff, which does add a couple of interesting Pokemon, so we'll see what happens with that. But who knows, maybe we go and try a 40 card deck, or there's all kinds of things you could try, but we were just kind of getting this first one under our belt, and I thought it'd be fun to have some coverage on how the event went. Sorry for being a 35-minute video talking about 6 decks for a format that's like played for the first time ever in this tournament or in this league. It felt important to document it. Hopefully you enjoyed this. I will have more versus content. I'm really into this set in this like format, so expect me to make more content about this. Until I see you again, have a good day.